for loon to provide real continuous coverage. We're just transferring the signal from one balloon to the next as they pass over a stationary recipient. And so by having this continuous flow, we're always filling in the area that we need to provide the service to. And the biggest hurdle for a balloon is the wind. Once you've inflated the balloon, it gets quite large on the ground and acts as a large sail. It would catch the wind, and it was really hard to control it. So then you try to find locations around the world that had zero wind. But then you're limited in scope because you can't find these perfectly wind-free zones that provide access to the location where you want to provide internet coverage. And then for a given launch site, the ideal wind conditions would only exist for a very short period of the day, thus limiting the number of balloons we could get up in that period of time. We wanted to do something where we could launch one every 20 minutes. And so we needed to rethink how you would launch a balloon. We wanted to develop a launch system that would allow us to block the wind as much as possible, and it could launch balloons from a number of different remote locations and be nimble enough to deploy into a new area as we expanded the program.
We went into a very controlled environment and launched many balloons and measured all of the aspects of that launch. And then from there we developed our tooling in order to guide that motion. The auto launcher is 45 feet wide and 55 feet tall. The system is a 4-tired steerable gantry crane, and we outfitted it with hangar doors that allows it to become a wind block. It's a highly customized piece of equipment. There's nothing else like this in the world. We lift the balloon right out of the box, so we don't ever have to do any extra handling to the balloon. We have jib cranes to lift up the balloon at the top of the balloon to secure it while we're filling it. The wind does not bother the team because we have the ability to steer the crane, so we're always downwind. And when we're in the right wind pattern, we lift the entire perch up, and then we angle the perch, and then we launch the balloon. So where we had 16 people launching a balloon, we now can do it with 4 people, and we can do it in a very short period of time. We can now launch at will instead of at will of the weather, and we can launch in a consistent manner. So we can keep a continuous ring of balloons that circumnavigate the globe.
Facebook still wants internet for the masses. German publication Netzpolitik reports that Facebook is working with aeronautics company Airbus on drone-based connectivity. According to a document obtained by Netzpolitik through a Freedom of Information request, test flights for an Airbus Zephyr drone with a Facebook payload were scheduled for November and December 2018 in Australia. The two companies previously met with European regulators on April 2018 to discuss providing connectivity using Zephyr drones. One European Commission official noted in an email that it could be deployed in a smart cities approach. The Zephyr is a high-altitude pseudo-satellite that charges its batteries via solar panels and can stay operative for weeks. Facebook and Airbus are reportedly testing the Model S, which has a 25-meter wingspan. TechCrunch reports that it operates at an altitude of 20 kilometers and uses millimeter wave radio to broadcast to the ground. The project is similar to Facebook's Aquila drone program, which aimed to provide internet connectivity to remote parts of the world. It was dropped in 2018 after years of development. Though it's clear that Airbus and Facebook met with the Australian Civil Aviation Safety Authority to discuss the test flights, it's unclear if they actually took place. A Facebook spokesman told Netzpolitik, "We continue to work with partners on high-altitude platform system connectivity. We don't have further details to share at this time." Airbus did not respond.
Massive football field-sized drones like this one, flying in the stratosphere, beaming down toxic 5G radiation into the earth, into the ocean, into our homes, into our bodies. Sounds like something out of a science fiction nightmare. But as you can see in this HAPS concept image, it's not far-fetched at all. And if the sponsors of the Hawk 30 program, tech giant SoftBank of Japan, defense contractor AeroVironment of California, and Alphabet, the parent company of Google, have their way, that nightmare will become a reality this fall for some Hawaii residents and eventually for much of the world's population. The Hawk 30 program, sponsored by the Research Corporation of the University of Hawaii, wants to use the Hawaiian island of Lanai in Maui County as a launch pad for unmanned drones, HAPS, high-altitude platform stations flying at 65 to 80,000 feet, carrying communications relays and transmitting wireless radiation into the air, land, and sea in a three-phase program. In the final phase of this surreal plan, small rural Lanai Island becomes a drone manufacturing plant, launch pad, and mission control center to fly massive drones throughout the equatorial belt. The drones would add to, and not replace, existing cell towers. Radiation harm is a concern, as one Hawk 30 drone broadcasts the equivalent of 1,800 cell towers, but at a much lower power level. However, power is irrelevant to health effects, except for tissue heating. Thousands of peer-reviewed research studies document the non-thermal effects of wireless radiation on humans and other living things. In some experiments, the lowest power levels caused the most leakage in the blood-brain barrier. An inverse relationship between power and health effects has also been shown. Wireless technology is not made safe by reducing the power. Also, a 1.5-ton drone falling from the stratosphere could have devastating effects. AeroVironment built 2 high-altitude drones, and they both came crashing down, with one breaking apart in mid-air, as this photo by NASA shows. The FAA-approved drone fly zone for this project includes 2 islands and an ocean expanse right in the middle of a humpback whale marine sanctuary. Lack of good faith on the part of the applicants is also a concern, as they built a 16,500 square foot drone hangar to house 2 drones on agricultural land without public notice and prior to a Lanai Planning Commission meeting. In their use determination application, the drone is repeatedly referred to as an airplane or aircraft, and an airstrip was created when, in Maui County, airports are not allowed on agricultural land. And then there is the loon. A mysterious object was spotted by Maui residents in early August, while at the same time, the Google loon was tracked online, shown here, circling above Maui County for about a week at around 60,000 feet. The loon transmits wireless radiation to the ground, extending signals over 3,000 square miles. This tennis court-sized helium balloon passed right over the designated drone flight strip on Lanai, shown here, maybe to collect weather and wireless communications data in preparation for the drone launch, since the 2 projects are partnered. Having tech giants Google and SoftBank with their global corporate ambitions at your doorstep would be overwhelming for even the most seasoned and savvy corporate execs. The Lanai Planning Commission, a volunteer body, is ill-equipped to deal with a complex project of this magnitude that has vast implications far beyond the confines of the small island. Final plans are to turn Lanai into a drone launch pad, potentially flying thousands of massive drones over much of the world's population, forming a 5G mesh network for the Internet of Things, while blanketing the Earth in wireless radiation.
Impacts of 60 gigahertz are not widely published information, but here's what I can tell you. And it's in part, ironically, from the promotional material of the big telecom companies themselves. Here it says, 60 gigahertz has a very distinct impact on none other than oxygen itself. Yes, here are the articles released by companies who are touting the benefits of 60 gigahertz. They openly admit that 60 gigahertz is absorbable by oxygen. You can see in this graph here its impact on oxygen. All the frequencies before 60 gig are non-impacted. Then once it hits that frequency, it spikes and becomes hugely absorbed by oxygen. Now in this article by the companies selling products that are going to run on 60 gig, they say that it's going to help its interference levels. Oh, isn't that nice? They don't want your first shooter video games to lag. And most of us know from mainstream releases promoting FIVEG that things like water and trees are going to get in the way of this frequency. So how in the world does this even make sense that we are using it? Unless their intentions are something else besides faster speeds. Anyway, knowing that this frequency impacts oxygen, now does it make sense to you how possibly when you mess with the absorption of oxygen in the human body, let me give you one guess which organ is going to suffer first. The way that the 60 gigahertz impacts oxygen is this. Oxygen, the atom, is O. Oxygen, the molecule, is O2, two atoms together. Now, these two atoms creating the oxygen molecule are sharing some electrons. 60 gigahertz causes the electrons surrounding oxygen molecules to spin. Right. Somewhat akin to how high-powered microwaves running on 2.4 are impacting molecules in foods such as water. They're heating in part by impacting those molecules to rotate or oscillate with each wave. The movement energy from the rotation of these super tiny water molecules is actually helping to heat the rest of the food. So in a similar way that 2.4 causes H2O to oscillate, 60 gigahertz, even at lower powers, is causing the electrons on oxygen molecules to spin. And as you might imagine, changes to the spin frequencies on oxygen electrons can have impacts on human biology. When you breathe in, the reason that breathing air into your lungs gets oxygen into your blood and therefore in important places like your brain is because the oxygen entering into your lungs gets picked up by a very important iron-containing protein called hemoglobin in your blood. But the unfortunate impact of oxygen molecules spinning the electrons is that it makes the hemoglobin unable to uptake the oxygen and get it to the rest of your body. Now, this info is taken from a textbook called Magnetobiology, Underlying Physical Problems. But even beyond this, isn't the fact that the telecom companies are admitting that 60 gigahertz is absorbable by oxygen just stunning information? And shouldn't the fact that 60 gigahertz even fundamentally interacts with oxygen, the most abundant and arguably most important element to all of biological life, be headline news that stops everything until we deeply test the implications of that? If you believe that they must have already tested 60 gigahertz for health and safety, please listen very carefully to what Big Telecom admits when they were asked that very question.
5G, as you well know, also uses higher frequency waves that don't travel as far and will rely on a network of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of small cell sites. And the question then is, are there any health implications, any public safety implications? So my question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Senator. I think, thank you for your focus on the issue. Safety is paramount, and as you alluded to, we rely on the expert agencies, we rely on the findings of the FDA and others as to the requirements to keep all of us safe. There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now. Happy to visit with you as to what opportunities you think there needs to be more studies, and we're always for more science. We also rely on what the scientists tell us.
So essentially, the answer to my question, how much money? Zero.
I can certainly follow up with you, Senator. To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
Anybody else know of industry commitments to back research, fund it, support it, to ascertain scientifically the health effect?
No, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here, so far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Is this all starting to make sense? What they are calling the CV is acute respiratory disease. And while you can't believe 100% anything coming out of China, it seems to me there were enough leaks of people suddenly falling over in the streets that the CH government doesn't want people talking about or sharing, with no other apparent illness. Guys, listen, CV is not new, okay? It's a cold, it's a flu. That's why it says on the side of hand sanitizers like Purell and the side of a can of Lysol that it kills it. It's common enough to be listed on the most common disinfectants. But now
The CH government is admitting that people can have virtually no symptoms and suddenly fall over. No symptoms, but then they can still have it. What is it? Lack of oxygen can do that too, right? I mean, let's use common sense here. What happens to you when you have the flu, right? You start to feel bad, achy, you call in sick, you don't want to go outside, you go to lay down in bed, mama brings you some chicken noodle soup, right? Or you just bopping around fully clothed, doing normal things and fall over. If your lungs are not able to put oxygen in your blood, how long would it take you to fall over? Not long.